Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Works in Progress. My name is Allison Harper, and today we're going to talk about snow prep. We are at the Salt Dome at the Bowers Hill Yard in the city of Chesapeake, and we have James Lamagna, Operations Administrator with the Department of Public Works, to give us a little bit more information on this topic. So winter is right around the corner, of course, so can you give us some things that the Department of Public Works does to prepare for potential winter weather coming to our area?
Yeah, absolutely. So we start very early on. We normally start in September with looking at our inventory of what we have for snow equipment. Getting the actual plows, put it on the trucks, making sure that the connections and fittings are all hooking up. We do that in course with the city garage. So our inspection is going straight to them, and they're doing their independent inspection to make sure all the equipment is running. We're looking at our supply of material, mainly salt. That's one of the critical needs of what we're going to need during a storm, depending on the characteristics of the storm. Behind me of 1,000 tons. This is the Bowers Hill Yard. And I have two other yards that have about 1,000 tons each currently.
Okay.
We feel like that's enough to get us through two major storms. We also talking with our employees, making sure our staff is ready, be able to work a shift that's usually 12 hours.
Okay.
But just being able to make sure that they got everything taken care of home so they can come in to work safely with us.
So you talked about salt. So right behind here we have Salt Dome. Well, the strategy behind why we use salt versus brine and in what situations?
Yeah. So salt is really going to be used when there's freezing to the road. As the snow falls, it has to have accumulation or some accumulation for us to actually start to plow and then start to apply salt.
Okay.
So as the accumulation gets to about 2 inches, that's when we actually put the plows down on the road and we start to plow. As the temperature going down, that's when we'll start to add straight salt out of the back of the plow, out of the back of the truck, and let it sit. Now, it needs to activate once it's down. So the timing of that is fluid,
right,
because it all depends on the temperature and depends on the moisture. So as that salt is activating, after a certain period of time, we're coming back, putting plows down again, and trying to get it off the road, versus how brine is made and applied. Our brine solution, we try to reach 23% salinity. Anything under 20% isn't really effective. Anything over 24, 25% is a waste. Okay. So we really try to hit that number of 23%. Characteristics of the storm depend a lot on the use of brine. So if we know we have a storm that wasn't preceded by a lot of precipitation, the roads aren't wet, that is our time when we would want to brine, obviously knowing that we're facing some colder temperatures. So if the roads are dry, that gives us the opportunity to put a brine down on the road. That acts as a barrier between the surface of the road and the ice or the snow, which would become ice. So that allows us to be able to plow it off much easier versus a non-brine road. If the characteristics of the storm is very wet before the actual snow falls, we really don't have a lot of opportunity to use brine.
Can you explain details of the snowplow route schedule?
Yeah, so we use a tiered approach. So we have our top tier, which is our emergency routes. Our emergency routes are our main north, south, east, west corridors. They connect us to our neighbors in other cities and of course with North Carolina. So those are our primary routes, and those also provide emergency services in case they need to be on the road, and of course access to the things like hospitals. Our emergency routes is our top tier, and then from there we start to break it down into a lower tier where we provide more connectivity within the route itself. So as that first route, that major emergency route is being cleared, our second tier and third tier, fourth tier routes are providing more connectivity to emergency route, but then of course to the community as well as the snowstorm response goes on.
Right, and then there's a reason why residential streets aren't taken care of. Can you explain why?
When we look at our residential roads, it's a lot of on-street parking. So just having a lot of on-street parking doesn't allow us to safely be able to plow those roads. So, and then it also boils down to resources. Right. So, you know, a city of our size, we really need to focus on the roads that are most important. So our collector or our arterial and emergency routes, our arterial roads are where we need to focus those resources.
So you mentioned resources. So obviously a snow response effort is not just Department of Public Works. You know, the garage is involved because they help us to keep our trucks on the road. What other agencies does the Department of Public Works work with in during the whole snow response strategy?
Yeah, so we are certainly not able to do this alone. When we start planning for snow every year, like I said, it starts in September, we're having conversations with the Emergency Management Office. We're using them as a resource to contact VDEM and to learn more about the forecast for the season
Right.
through the National Weather Services. We also, when it gets close to a storm and we know we have it, we start having more detailed conversations with the garage, of course. Those are probably the main one, but public utilities and facilities maintenance, the sheriff's office. All of those groups, development permits, play a role in helping us have an overall response to the community needs.
What advice can you give motorists that are on the road and they see a snowplow?
Yeah, so allowing us to have space is the most important thing. Now, we realize motorists need to be on the road, and a lot of this happens during daylight hours. Obviously, our trucks are very visible with the lot of lights that we have on them, and trucks are usually not by themselves. It's usually a strategy of 2 trucks or 3 trucks together working one direction. So when you see those trucks, give those operators and that equipment as much space as you can and allow us to clear the roads, because we can do a much better job if we have that space.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks for all the good information today.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much.
Well, that concludes this episode of Works in Progress. We'll see you next time.